with hard work and determination. While the fact that a special marble for the Nigerian Television Authority, Abuja Channel 58, shows the significance of NTA to the people of Egba land. The site of Ogun River, which one will see as one descends the rock, was also acknowledged. The river, which runs like a silver chain amidst a forest of aged, corrugated roofs, bordered by thick green forest, which melts into the horizon, is breathtaking. The river did not only give the state its name, it equally traversed about 4 other states in the southwestern part of Nigeria. The descent from the top of the rock does not end the sojourn into this living museum of undeterminable age. The added structure, like the museum, the bush bar, the restaurant, among others, offer added value for money.
To start with, this is showing you one of the oldest pictures within our archive, illustrating Olumo Rock during the first developmental stage. You'd notice then that the fence was so close, the staircase were just created for easy climbing. A constant reminder that where you are even standing upon today were people's homes at a particular time. Remember, some people paid the price of the development you're enjoying. What is the height of Olumo Rock? 137 meters above the sea level. Who are the Egbas themselves? They are not from here. They migrated from somewhere we called Old Oyo Empire. The process of climbing and hiding underneath the rock brought about the name of the town, Abe Okuta. But the name Olumo Rock was not named. The people said Oluwalomo Kale Ribisasi, which means God molded it so that we have a place of refuge. Some of the unique features you'll be seeing up there are the caves, the shrine. Only 2 people are allowed into that shrine. The Alake of Egbaland, who is the paramount ruler of the people, and the chief Ifa priest. Peradventure you didn't know, they were worshipping this rock with female virgins at the time. That has been abolished.
For tourists, the opportunity of a rounded trip, as well as the opportunity of picking a souvenir, is quite enticing.
All this were put in place, one, to generate revenue for the government, and also to attract more people. Before now, up to 2012, visitors and tourists to Olumo Rock, they only come in, enter the gate, go up the rock, come down and go home. But now there's opportunity for them to move around, to derive some visual pleasure from their visit to the galleries. Apart from the visual pleasure they derive from their visits, they also go home with some cultural education about the people through their contact with the works of art.
Being here was fun because I've been hearing of Olumo Rock and I've never been here. So being here was so fun that I've never expected, hearing history that I've never heard, about things that have happened in Nigeria that I never knew.
We just decided to take something African, something that is our own, that we can, just to see stuff, something natural, and it is very, very closer to this place. And this is my first time of coming here. And, climbing the Olumo Rock, I was kind of nervous, for the first time, and it was fun, very, very fun, yeah, I enjoyed myself.
Some of the artworks in the museum further accentuate the connection between the rock and the Egba people. For instance, these paintings on the rock itself underscores the various evolution that the rock has witnessed over the years. Some of the other pictures tell some beautiful stories about the Egbas. The dexterity of the Egbas with Adire is also on parade, with many products coming out of the material. For every visitor to Abeokuta and the Olumo Rock, by extension, the hospitality of the people and their industriousness are 2 easily noticeable traits of the people. The Olumo Rock is a must-see for everyone who hasn't visited. One step through the gates and you'll immediately feel serenity and nature at its very best. Indeed, Nigeria, the giant of Africa, is a repository of many wonders too delightful to be ignored.
NTA, you can't beat the rich.
Leather industry in Kano is as old as the beginning of the Hausa civilization. Spanning over 1,000 of years, the industry supplied leather materials to the hinterland and also served as a major trade link between Kano and other parts of the world through transparent trade. It flourished for many years and served as an essential economic mainstay of the Hausa land. In Kano today, few tanneries struggle to operate at a capacity quite inadequate to feed the local leather industries. And this has no doubt stunted their growth, not only in Kano, but other parts of Nigeria. This is Majema local leather industry or traditional leather industry in Kofar Wambai area of the city of Kano. This place is believed to have existed for over 90 years. It is indeed a heaven for different categories of people, irrespective of their ages.
To ita asali dai wannan mu sana'a jima mun taso ne mun tare da kakanninmu suna yin wannan harka.
We grew up into the business of tanning, which we inherited from our forefathers. I think this place is over 80 years. And for how long have you been into this trade? I've been into this trade for approximately 50 years.
As you can see, all activities to do with leather processing is being carried out here.
I happen to see myself in this trade. My parents and their parents were also in the occupation. At least, I have spent over 15 years working here. I tanned a specific leather called tundra, a skin of python, just like this one. I also operate on skin of crocodile and goats, among many others.
In spite of the serious decline in its operations and profitability across the value chain, some business people in Kano still see prospect in leather business and are determined to stay in it.
So now we increase the capacity instead for 15,000 a day, we make it as 30,000 pieces. That's our capacity for right now. But we have the plan to increase more, to make it like 50 to 60,000 pieces a day.
When we receive the raw skins, we are going to grade the skins by size. After that, we are going to trim. And we want to make the skin to be shaped from the starting stage itself. From there, we will take the skin to the process so that the bacteria will put some chemicals to avoid the bacteria so the skins will not spoil.
One cannot overemphasize the value this industry adds to the economy, and it is worrisome that this once highly prosperous industry will be allowed to decay.
Well, you can see how many people you employ here. Before, some people here is not more than 200 people are working in this place. Now we have more than 500 people, and we want to increase our capacity. We need more people again.
For the leather industry to thrive, government must invest substantially in the local content and re-emphasize on policies that encourage all players in the industry.
End in sight for resident doctor strike as federal government commits to implementation of agreement.
With a view to calling off the strike urgently so we can save the lives that are now being lost unnecessarily.
We are trusting that the same God who has brought these 15 out is going to help us to receive the other 63.
More students of Bethel Baptist Secondary School, Kaduna, regained freedom from abductors.
Tackling climate change, Yobe State flags off tree planting campaign.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss VAT administration, matters arising.
Achieving a sustainable and highly efficient VAT administration has always been the desire of the different tiers of government in the country, such that attempts are made from time to time to look into pieces of legislations in backing this up.
You're right, Kyria. Now, in order to get by on the aforementioned, not only could it be quite a task to get the people to comply with their value-added tax obligations, it appears also that the power to collect those taxes is one that is now generating some frustration as there is contention on that issue at the moment.
Yes, VAT revenues run into billions of money for the governments all over. And in the midst of a dwindling oil economy or economics, such subnational governments today are seeking more means to their internally generated revenues and are going loud on value-added tax obligations and the collection drive.
Now, available statistics show that VAT generated in the first half of 2020 was well over 650 billion naira. And that, of course, was an increase of nearly 9% in comparison to the first half of 2019. Now, without a doubt, the race to effect a more robust VAT administration will be rewarding for those who certainly get it right.
No doubt, Kingsley. It will be recalled that the Nigerian government in February 2020 also increased the VAT rate from 5% to 7.5% to address the current harsh realities to getting the right mix of the fiscal policies and development.
While the 1999 Constitution, as amended, gives in the schedules the provisions and division to taxing powers, other pieces of legislation have equally enabled the Federal Inland Revenue, FIRS, for instance, to achieve some of its targets. Now, although some gains have been recorded in the country's tax administration, other issues have lingered. And those issues, of course, include multiplicity of taxes, poor tax administration, and, of course, inadequate tax database, together with touting, as well as the complex nature, some say, of Nigeria's tax laws.
Yes, there's also an issue with the non-payment of tax refunds, among other challenges, but solutions that could alter the tax landscape in Nigeria have been preferred in some fora. Key players insist on streamlining collection mechanism, introducing of tax technology, creation of better tax awareness and communication, simplifying the tax laws and abolishing some of these legislation.
Well, there's still a lot to do, Kirian, in order to get the country nearer its task goals in terms of generating revenue for purposes of development and services. We will, of course, be having guests in our conversation segment today to discuss matters arising specifically from VAT and, of course, ancillary matters on the tax administration in the country. On that note, I'd like to welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. We are reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I am Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Kirian Umai, also joining Kingsley to welcome you to the Monday's edition of your Good Morning Show. We'll always bring you complimentary segments. And of course, now we have Najatu Tijani, who has the morning news. Good morning, Najatu.
Good morning, Kirian and Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the morning news. 15 students of Bethel Baptist Secondary School, Kaduna, who regained freedom from bandit captivity Sunday morning, have been reunited with their families. The 15 students brings to 43 the number of kidnapped students who have regained freedom from the bandits since their abduction from their school about 2 months ago.
In everything, God says we should give thanks, and we are giving thanks for what He has done, and we are trusting that the same God who has brought these 15 out is going to help us to receive the other 63.
We want to thank God for well-wishers, relatives, and the Church of God, who actually have been supporting to see that our children are being released.
Meanwhile, operatives of the Nigeria Police Force, working with the military and other security forces, have arrested a 22-year-old female suspect, one Gloria Okoli, for alleged complicity in a series of attacks on security formations and other critical national infrastructure, including INEC offices in the southeastern part of the country. A statement by the force indicates that the suspect, a native of Umutanza in Imo State, was arrested following investigations and implementation of Operation Restore Peace. Police investigations reveal that Gloria Okoli is a member of IPOB ESN in Imo State, who worked closely with one Benjamin Uzoma Emujiri, ESN commander, earlier declared wanted by the police for his role in planning, coordinating and executing attacks on the Imo State Police Command headquarters and the Imo State headquarters of the Nigerian Correctional Service. Meanwhile, the Inspector General of Police, Usman Al-Ali Baba, has applauded the security operatives for their unrelenting fight against violent crimes in the country, giving assurance to citizens of the commitment of the force to improving security in the country. The Commander, Multinational Joint Task Force, MNJTF, Major General Abdul Khalifa Ibrahim, has stressed determination to ensure that remnants of the Islamic State of West Africa Province, ISWAP, and elements of the Boko Haram group are rooted out of the Lake Chad Basin. The commander gave the charge while on operational visit to formations under his command. He was at the Forces Sector 3 headquarters in Monguno, Borno State, Sector 1 in Maura, Cameroon, and Sector 2 in Bagasola, Chad, where he was accompanied by principal staff officers from all participating countries. Major General Ibrahim expresses renewed commitment to taking the fight to the enclaves of the terrorists to hasten the end of the conflict. 4 fuel-laden trucks containing 129,000 litres of siphoned petrol have been intercepted and impounded by the Nigerian Navy at Barua, a community in Abuja area of Lagos State. The vandals were stopped in their tracks during a patrol exercise by operatives of a joint task force, Operation Awati.
Striking thing is that within a built-up area like this, for people to have the effrontery to come and carry out illegal acts against the mandate of Operation Awati, what follows is we're going to move them back to base and follow up with further investigations and handing over to appropriate prosecuting agencies.
The National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, has apprehended a major drug dealer wanted for attempted export of 69.65 kilograms of cocaine, heroin and cannabis to the United Kingdom through the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, Lagos. The suspect was arrested in Ujudu, Ikeja area of Lagos State. Similarly, an Italy-bound passenger was arrested on Ethiopian Airways flight to Italy via Addis Ababa for ingesting illicit drugs, which the suspect, under observation, excreted 68 wraps of heroin weighing 800 grams. Other illicit substances intercepted include 1.66 kilograms of meth concealed in bolts and locally made footwear going to Australia, 1 kilogram of cocaine coming from Ghana, and arrest of a South African returnee with 58 grams of skunk. At least 2,504.8 kilograms of diverse illicit drugs were seized from multiple suspects in the past week. Meanwhile, the ongoing nationwide strike by resident doctors is likely to be suspended as soon as the federal government starts to implement the new agreements reached at an all-stakeholders meeting aimed at resolving the doctor strike. The Minister of Labour and Employment, Chris Ngigi, confirmed this while reading a memorandum of understanding with all stakeholders at the conciliatory meeting.
Well, we now expect the NMA and NAD to use this as a plank to consult their members with a view to calling off the strike urgently so we can save the lives that are now being lost unnecessarily. NAD pleaded with us to consult their members on an item which they want us to include in the conditions.
In an effort to curtail the effects of climate change occasioned by desert encroachment and environmental degradation, Yobe State Government and the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Activities have flagged off the 2021 tree planting campaign in Jakusko local government area as part of efforts to raise 3 million seedlings of assorted tree species for free distribution to people across the state.
Safeguarding the environment is a task that requires the cooperation and participation of all and sundry. In this respect, I would like to enjoin the Committee for Environment and Sanitation to each of the 17 local government areas to scale up their activities and also liaise with their respective territorial rulers.
The rate of COVID-19 infection remains high, with 388 new cases recorded in the last 24 hours. In the latest figures released by the NCDC, Lagos State still maintains the lead with 166 new cases, followed by Akwa Ibom State with 89, then Rivers with 76, Oyo State 15, Edo has 12, Benue 11, Delta 7, the FCT and Ogun State 4 cases each, Kaduna 2 cases, while Gombe and Nasarawa have a single case each. Nigeria now has a total of 187,023 confirmed cases, out of which 168,455 have been treated and discharged, while 2,268 have died of the virus. And that's the news for now. The program continues with Kingsley and Kieran after the break.
Hey! Hi! It's hard to live when you are all alone. Hi. So, my car isn't working. Hello? Good morning, I'm pretty sorry I'm late. Where are you guys going? Hello? Can anybody hear me? Can you see me?
Get an Airtel home broadband and enjoy life as it should be.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
We are all Nigerians. Against all odds, we shall and must remain united. We may have our challenges, our problems, and setbacks. However, together we shall overcome them all. What doesn't break us shall make us stronger. This is the mindset that shall bring peace, progress, and prosperity to our beloved country. Do not let tribal and religious sentiments govern how you think, act, or feel. Don't be influenced by those who want to destroy our precious national unity. Everybody who is a Nigerian is your brother and your sister. This is the mindset of the new Nigeria. It is also the mindset that we must all adopt. Let us support each other in creating the Nigeria of our dreams. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
Admission forms into NTA Television College JOS 2021-2022 2-year National Innovation Diploma Program are on sale from 9th of August to 29th of October 2021. Candidates who wish to apply for admission must have 5 O-level credits in relevant subjects including English language and mathematics. The courses available for application include film and television production, broadcast journalism, and television engineering technology. The admission forms can be obtained at NTA Television College or any NTA station nationwide at the cost of 7,500 naira only. Payment for the form is through remitter platform only in favor of NTA Television College. For more inquiries, please call 0803 079 5335 or 0806 980 9807. Management Announcer.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. It's time for business, and let's go over to our business desk.
NASD OTC market cap contracted by 1.25%, week on week to close at 639.77 billion naira. Total volume traded year to date stands at 1,912,779 units in 3,626 deals, and total value traded is 14,331,814.
Now, what happened this week, in my view, has to do with profit taking. Okay, more of profit taking because you notice that the market gained only for 2 days. 3 days, the NGX Osha index, was down. So except for Tuesday and Thursday when we saw some, positive performance, the other days, including Friday, the market ended on a negative note, as such that week on week, we are now talking about a loss, a dip of about 0.11%. That's week on week.
Total trade activity for the year is valued at 14,331,814.744 naira.
And that was business news. Now it's now time to take a look at some national dailies on newspaper review.
Our newspaper reviewer, Baya Atoyebe, is with us this morning. Baya, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah, Baya, it's good to see you.
Good morning.
I hope you had a pleasant weekend.
Thank you.
Very well. So let's begin by taking a look at the window page of the Daily Trust newspaper. Now, below the nameplate of the Daily Trust, there is a story there. You take a look very closely. It says, school children in captivity. Salihu Tanko Islamic School, Tegina, that's in Niger State. They've been in captivity for 85 days. That's to say, Salihu Tanko Islamic School, Tegina, 85 days. Federal Government College, Birini Yauri, 68 days. Bethel Baptist High School, Kujama, 50 days. And then below that, you have three other headlines. PDP crisis and anxiety as secondos rejects October deadline. Aircraft handling. Federal government and operators lose $28 million yearly. Taraba Fulani leaders hand over 11 kidnappers and gun runners to police. Doctors in mass exodus amidst NARD strike. That is the Association of Resident Doctors strike. And you have four riders to that. It says fewer than 40,000 doctors, serving 200 million Nigerians. My facilities stripped of personnel. CMD cries out. Federal government should develop emergency intervention. That's according to the NMA. Act fast. Experts urge government and others. And you have the photograph there saying an entertainer performing during the luncheon as part of the wedding ceremony of the president's son. That's Yusuf Buhari and Zahra Bayero. That the wedding, of course, took place in Bichi at the weekend, but the reception was in Abuja yesterday. And right at the foot of the front page of the Daily Trust, bandits release 15 more students of Bethel School. Plateau unrest draws Muslim communities to protect churches. Buhari's son's wedding, Gumi blasts politicians who flew jets to Bichi.
All right, let's turn to the leadership newspaper. Private sector invests $8 billion in local fertilizer production. It has a rider to that. Federal government has created conducive environment for investment. That's on page 4. Now, the lead story on the leadership newspaper, 7 weeks after, 65 Bethel Baptist students still in captivity as 15 regain freedom. It's on page 4. It has 4 riders to that. It said, Islamia people spent, just read that, spent 85 days in kidnappers' dens, 79 FGC, Bini Yauri, 77 days, bandits killed 2 pastors, 24 others in Benue, Kaduna and Katsina. Kaduna government orders probe of Zengo Kataf killing. Of course, the photo story shows the reuniting of the released Bethel students and their parents. And just on the left-hand side of that photo story, we have new boarding fees for Lagos Model College to stay, according to officials on page 13. Change of service chiefs yet to produce results, according to Catholic bishops. It's on page 6. Federal government's no work, no pay policy won't end strike, according to NIRD. That's on page 6. Despite $500 million loan, Nigerian airports missing from world ranking. That's on page 19. Ex-PDP governors move to produce a successor. That's a second deceased successor. Flood destroys 2,026 houses, 95 farms in Kano. All that on page 7. Bayo.
Thank you, Kirian. Let's start with the good news that came for students of the Bethel Baptist School. 15 students were released over the weekend. This brings to 43 the number of students that have been released so far. Bandits invaded the school on July 25th and took away 121 students. By account, the students have been away for 50 days with the criminals. The Punch report that some parents of the students said the kidnappers actually called them to pick up their children. Punch reports that 28 students earlier released were released upon payment of 50 million naira ransom. The latest release of 15 students were as a result of a payment of 24 million ransom. That is what the Punch is reporting. The Punch and leadership all report that students that are still with the abductors stand at 65. And from all indications, one mother who was very sad said she was called upon to come and pick her daughter, but when the students were brought, her daughter was not among those that were released. Reverend Israel Akaji of the Baptist Convention says that we thank God for the free of these students. We'll continue to pray for the release of the 63 students that are still behind. So the Reverend is saying 63 behind. The newspapers are saying 65 are the number that are still behind. There are also indications given by Minister of Labour and Employment that some understanding may have been reached with striking National Association of Resident Doctors. Dr. Chris Ngige says implementation is to begin from today to seek an end to the 21-day strike. The Nigerian Medical Association and the Nigeria Association of Resident Doctors were a party to the new memorandum seeking to end the strike. President Muhammad Buhari has insisted that the strike has to be brought to an end. The National Association of Resident Doctors, which indicated that it needed to consult its members before it will append its signature. Dr. Ngige indicated that NRD asked for a condition, a clause that nobody is to be victimized for their role for or against the strike. Meanwhile, highlights of the agreement that is being signed include the non-payment of house officers listed about 114 officers. Upon certification, they will be paid by September. Resident training fund for 2020 and 2021 have been provided for by the Budget Office. It is hoped that for 2021, 4.802 billion is provided for in the 2021 supplementary budget, and it is to process in 1 week. By August 27, resident doctors will be getting about 542,000 as outstanding allowance. On hazard allowance, there's going to be a separate meeting for negotiations, separately for the National Association of Resident Doctors and another one for JOHESU, that is the Health Workers Association. There's been 2 coronations over the weekend. At Bichi, there was the coronation of Nasr Ado-Bayero as the Emir of Bichi. He's the second Emir of Bichi. He succeeded Alhaji Aminu Ado-Bayero, who is now the Emir of Kano. Also at Warri, a new Olu of Warri, Shola Emiko, was installed as Atuashi III. His ascension is described as a new dawn for the Ishekiri people. At Bichi, there was also the wedding of the first son, Yusuf Buhari, to Zara Aminu Ado-Bayero. Yesterday, a luncheon was held at the old banquet hall of the presidential villa for the first son, Yusuf Buhari, and his wife Zara. The wedding was solemnized at Bichi on Friday, with many dignitaries across the nation in attendance. The Emir of Bichi, the bride's father, joined the first family at the luncheon and was also attended by the first ladies of Niger and Guinea-Bissau, including former first ladies of Nigeria. Other dignitaries were the president, the vice president, first lady, the wife of the vice president, as well as political and governors of states. Daily Trust reports that anxiety in the People's Democratic Party over challenges ahead of the party's national convention. The paper is reporting that the embattled chairman is insisting on completing his tenure of 4 years. The party, at its expanded stakeholders meeting, resolved to bring forward its convention for October so as to resolve the crisis. The national chairman is reportedly insisting on completing his tenure of 4 years. He is said to have asserted that he will vacate office only if the party constitution is amended. He was elected at the convention of the party in December 2017, along with National Working Committee members, and their tenure is due to expire in December. Section 47(1) of the PDP constitution stipulates a term of 4 years. 47(2) says that elections of national officers shall be at the national convention. The drug dealer, a major drug dealer, has been arrested for attempting to export 69.65 kilograms of cocaine, heroin, and cannabis to United Kingdom. How did he do it? The drug leader has sent a driver to send a freight to a forwarding company at the airport. The driver was caught, and later on, the baron was tracked. He was found at a church in Ojodu. As he walked out of the church, he was arrested. Apparently, his prayer for success was not accepted. Meanwhile, there's been a glimmer of hope over insurgency. Daily Trust is reporting that there's a climate of hope, but that is also dampened by anxiety. Governor Babagana Zulum has expressed anxiety because some of the returning bandits who have surrendered are causing concern by the citizens. Some of the citizens are worried that these people were involved in the killing of their loved ones. Already, the surrendering of the insurgents has also brought along the return of a few Chibok girls, some of them with their children and their purported husbands. The concerns are reasoned that some of have been raised is that the futility of the war led to the insurgents surrendering. Others attribute it to the death of Shekau, which faction had now been over. Many also have indulged in atrocities and need to demonstrate remorse and penance and seek forgiveness of the community. That is the prevailing situation in Borno, and it is a dilemma. In fact, the governor Babagana Zulum has to visit the army headquarters to discuss about the returning and the surrendering officers and how to have them integrated into the society without any necessary backlash.
Well,
those are the key stories.
I was just wondering, you know, the issue of doctors in Mark's exodus amid the strike by the resident doctors, it's an issue that we haven't attempted to address head on. It's still part of the brain drain. I know that Bayo would say, well, some of them go out, they meet with frustration, but they keep going out.
Yes.
And the complaint is that the environment is not suitable for them to function. But I think that we should take a step back and ask ourselves, what does it cost to produce a medical doctor in Nigeria?
It costs a lot.
A lot of money.
Yes.
And part of that cost is borne by the government.
Yes, substantially.
Because it's basically tuition free.
Currently, house officers are one of the grounds for the protest is house officers being paid. A house officer is officer in training. They are being paid, and who pays it is the government that is paying it.
That's right.
So at the end of their completing their course, if they find the environment not conducive, they ship out. Currently, if you go by the UN standard, we are supposed to have 1 doctor to 400. We have 1 doctor to 6,000.
No, Bayo,
if you look at this data, with the exodus, it means that you are going to, that ratio is going to increase.
Yeah, Bayo, I know those are consequential issues. I'm looking at the cost of producing a doctor and who bears that cost. And at the end of the day, you keep hearing that government is not doing enough, it's not doing enough. If you were to go to train as a physician in any of the advanced countries, you will have to take a loan. And you repay that loan for many years after your induction into the medical field. So the Nigerian government is spending so much money producing doctors, and yet we are unable to retain these doctors in our services. And we have to ask the question whether, one, we should continue to spend that kind of money in the first instance. And then two, what needs to be done to retain them.
Well, exactly. It should be structured in such a way that they'll have to, take an oath, that after this training, that you must serve the nation for a number of years before you ship out, if that's what your intentions are. But if the federal government is spending so much money, actually, in the training of doctors, there's no reason really why some of them will go out. Because there's nothing binding, on them. There's nothing binding, so that's why they leave. Yes. And again, the incessant the strike actions on the part of doctors has also, played out over the years. Now look at what's happened. Like, for how many weeks now? They've been on strike, and they go to hospitals. You weep for those who are really sick.
When we were growing up in our days, you could get scholarship or also loan, and when you got a loan for your education, you were bonded, and when you graduate, you have to find a means of paying out that loan before you go. And then, if conditions are made such that because of the desirability of your service, the substantial amount of your training cost is provided by the government, then there should be a means by which you will be forced to at least pay by way of service to the nation before if you have to leave, then you have to.
Precisely. I mean, we keep saying inadequate manpower. You train the manpower and then they take off. So you have to make, you have to strike a balance.
Yes.
You have to strike a balance.
One of the balance is also creating the conducive atmosphere for them to remain.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I agree with Kira.
Yeah.
Editorial?
Editorial, abuse the naira and be punished. But at least abuse of the naira has been in the air for decades now. Each time the central bank.
Yes, central bank will always remind us that abusing the naira is an offence, punishable under the Central Bank Act. But this resurgence has come of recent because it has become a common prevalence. You see it on the social media every day. At public functions, persons will hold a bunch of the naira and throw it carelessly into the atmosphere in a way of exhibiting the appreciation of the ceremony and just show of opulence. In the process, the naira will drop on the ground and people will trample on it. In some instances, even foreign currencies are sometimes so disparagingly spread at functions. And central bank has now listed instances of such that constitute an offense. That is a bond spraying in the public, trampling on naira itself, defacing the naira, and also the tendency to sell naira currencies. Because they are parties, people go for mint currencies and they go to buy them. All those are listed as offenses that are triable, and people will be charged to court. And central bank is now ringing the alarm bell that anybody found guilty of these activities will not be spared. There's also another corollary. Those who are known as internet fraudsters, we call them locally here as Yahoo boys. Sometimes they park their car and in the street, they splash money.
Well, that one is excessive, really, But let us not shy away from our tradition, in the country, that if there's a performance going on, that the tendency to spray money is there. But then to the points that you have made in terms of people, throwing it in the atmosphere and the people trampling on it and all of that, perhaps it is bad. But that tradition, if you say, look, don't spray money, like at weddings, wine carryings, these are traditions. You spray money, but perhaps, let's say with caution. But to say that, look, people will not spray money will be very, very extremely difficult to achieve. Yes, it's difficult to achieve because even central bank staff, if their children are, their wedding, and you cannot tell people to soak it, to not spray money on them while they are dancing.
The issue, the way it is framed, is not spraying money. It is abuse of the national currency. That's an offense. Let's be honest. I mean, there's no, you cannot, the national currency is one of our national symbols.
Yes.
In fact, it's a measure of the level of work you and I are doing this morning, Kirian, that you would find some elements who, I don't know how they acquire their money, they go there and then the next thing, they are using it to even stone others, and then the notes are on the floor, you are trampling on it. It costs money to print that money. It costs money to print that money. You must respect, I mean, that's worldwide. One of the rules of money is that you must respect your money. Otherwise, it leaves you.
Legal tender must be respected.
I agree. Of course, that is correct. There's no doubt about that.
Is it wrong if you encase the money in an envelope and give to the person.
This the tradition we are talking about. Of course, we must go back and ask ourselves, what is it that is intended when you spray money on somebody's forehead? You are saying, look, may you earn more money. It's like you are praying for more wealth for the individual. You are blessing him. Not that you just come, some crooks, who have no visible or viable means of livelihood. They are spraying him. Come on, buy and carry on. But unfortunately, even you see armed policemen, who are guarding them when they are abusing the national currency.
Honestly, I think that one, white carrying, where you saw some people that came from South Africa, Nigerians from South Africa, they had their own canopy, separate canopy, And during the dancing session, come and see. I mean, it's unbelievable. Not just Naira, other currencies, Euro, pounds, dollars, and what have you. It is wrong. That's what we're saying. Yes. It is wrong. It is wrong.
And it should be addressed.
Yes. On that note, we conclude this segment of Good Morning Nigeria. That's the Super Review. Bayo, thank you indeed for analysis. We'll see you again tomorrow for more. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. When we come back, we'll be dealing with the issue of VAT and the matters arising.
We are all Nigerians. Against all odds, we shall and must remain united. We may have our challenges, our problems, and setbacks. However, together we shall overcome them all. What doesn't break us shall make us stronger. This is the mindset that shall bring peace, progress, and prosperity to our beloved country. Do not let tribal and religious sentiments govern how you think, act, or feel. Don't be influenced by those who want to destroy our precious national unity. Everybody who's Nigerian is your brother and your sister. This is the mindset of the new Nigeria. It is also the mindset that we must all adopt. Let us support each other in creating the Nigeria of our dreams. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
She's saying she feels unwell, despite my efforts to practice good hygiene.
Mom says wash your hands to keep the germs away.
Washing hands is good with surfaces that also have germs, and you shouldn't use just anything for cleaning them. Use Jik. Jik's formula has been scientifically proven to stay active for longer, giving you whitening and germ kill protection on a variety of surfaces. Disinfect to protect, just Jik. Endorsed by National Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives.
Dear compatriots, our country can be as great as we want.
Let us all commit ourselves to its greatness.
We must be willing to set aside our differences, unite and stay as one.
In our expansive landmass, human and material resources, and plurality lies our strength.
Let our challenges lead us to rediscover our common ground, and together, let's find solutions.
This will take some time, so it requires patience, tolerance, and forgiveness from every one of us.
Let all hands come on deck to protect and transform our country.
Let us unite and see each other not as adversaries, but as brothers and sisters.
Together, we can build a better Nigeria for ourselves and for the next generations.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA, with support from Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
We should understand that the well-being and the security of this country is the paramount to any government. Prior to now, we are doing more of defensive activities to protect our bases and fight the war when we are challenged or when an objective is attacked. But right now, what we do is to carry the battle into areas where the banditries or the Boko Harams or whatever. The Nigerian Army has brought into its platforms the BT tanks, main battle tanks, helicopters, Augusta 135, the MiG helicopters, which can operate even in the night, the Super Tucanos that are about to be launched.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
As a prompt for our conversation segment this morning on VAT administration, matters arising, let's take this background put together by correspondent Abuja Jibril.
Since the introduction of value-added tax VAT in 1993, it has continued to serve as a major source of tax revenue for the country. Data from the National Bureau of Statistics (NBS) reveals that the total VAT earnings since 2018 has been on the rise, standing at 1.108 trillion naira in that year. The following year, it rose to 1.19 trillion naira, and in 2020, it stood at 1.5 trillion naira. Since increasing the rate of VAT from 5% to the current 7.5%, data from the NBS also shows that the country earned about 2.5 trillion naira from VAT in the last 18 months, that is, from January 2020 to June 2021. No doubt, VAT is significant as a means of revenue generation, particularly with the recent decline in oil revenue because of the effect of COVID-19. However, the administration of VAT in the country has been the bone of contention between the different tiers of government. There has been the debate about the disparity in the percentage of contribution by some states as against what is benefited by each state. More recently, the powers of the Federal Inland Revenue Service (FIRS) has been challenged by subnationals over the rightful authority to collect VAT and personal income tax in states. Currently, the federal government takes about 15% of the VAT revenue, while the states get 50% and local governments 35%. On the average, each state gets about 1.4%. Some tax experts say this is unfair to states that contribute more than 10%. Other experts are of the opinion that if VAT collection is left in the hands of states, it would be fraught with inefficiencies and other administrative complications. The big question to ask is, how can the country's tax administration be harmonized towards achieving fiscal federalism? Guests on the program will speak to these and more shortly.
Many thanks, Abdulsalam Jibril, for that background. Now, joining us to discuss those issues, we would like to welcome from Kano. He's joining us via Zoom. You can see him there on the left side of your screen. Ismaila Muhammadu Zakare is a managing partner in a firm of chartered accountants, tax and financial advisors. Ismail Zakare, delighted to have you with us this morning.
I'm delighted to be here. Good morning.
And then on the right side of your screen, and that's joining us from Lagos Network Studios, we'd like to welcome Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, is the fiscal policy partner and Africa tax leader at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Mr. Oyedele, pleasure to have you with us this morning.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
And here in the studio, we have Kennedy Iwundu. Kennedy Iwundu is the Vice Chairman, Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, Abuja District Society. You're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
All right, gentlemen, once again, a pleasure to have you with us on the conversation segment of today's program. Let's begin by just first seeking the clarification, because over the years, we've had unending debates and controversies surrounding the key issue of tax administration. In particular, those two lingering issues have to do with the power to impose tax and then the authority to collect tax. Why is it that these matters appear still unsettled in our jurisdiction? Let's begin with Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, and then we'll go over to Kano.
once and for all. Maybe by way of some historical background. So VAT in itself is a relatively new law globally. It was introduced in the 50s, 60s, and it was first implemented in its current form by France. So it was the government of France that first introduced it. So you would understand if you find difficulties in many countries in clearly defining how that law should be implemented. It is because it's relatively new. In 1963, when Nigeria, based on the 1963 Constitution of Nigeria, when we decided we wanted to be a federation, if you go through that constitution, there was no mention of VAT, in fact, no mention of sales tax, but there was a mention of trade taxes, focusing on various taxes that can be imposed on commodities and all of that. And the structure as of that time was that that law was going to be enacted by the parliament. Remember, at the time we had a parliamentary system of government, and collected centrally, but the money was to be shared to the regions at the time. So things evolved, and in 1993, Nigeria decided to introduce VAT. Before then, some of the states had sales tax. Once VAT was introduced, it replaced those sales taxes that we had across a number of states. And then fast forward to 1999. So you need to always remember that the VAT law predates the 1999 Constitution. So in the 1999 Constitution, there was no mention of sales tax, no mention of VAT. So the way this is now being interpreted is if something wasn't mentioned in the exclusive legislative list and it's not on the concurrent list, it has to be that it's exclusively preserved for the state. So this is why there's now a debate about who can collect, who can impose, and all of that, leading to the judgment that happened recently in Rivers State, and then the turn of events were, extremely, fast. That we now even have a VAT law of Rivers State, leading us to where we are today.
Well,
Kylian, if you don't mind. Yeah, I just...
on the same question, right?
On the same question. But, Mr. Oyedele, well, thanks for the historical background you gave. But Mr. Zachary on Zoom from Kano, my question actually was broader than the narrower response that Mr. Oyedele gave, useful as it is for this conversation. Namely, why do we keep having this lingering contention over the powers to impose taxes and then the authority to collect taxes? Because there are two distinct things in the law of taxation.
Okay. Thank you for the question. The issue of the powers to impose taxes. Actually, taxation is a provision first in the Constitution. So the power of government or the state to impose taxes rests from the Constitution. And in the Constitution, some taxes are coming from the exclusive list and others are coming from the concurrent list, meaning that the states can also impose taxes on certain individuals or certain kinds of taxes. There is also in the laws of the Federation, the laws that talk about the taxes to be collected by the state, by the federal, as well as by the local government councils. And so therefore, the different tiers of government, which is the state, the federal government, the state government, and the local governments, have different machineries, different administrative machineries for the collection of these taxes. And therefore, because of these differences in the machineries for collection, there's also a difference in terms of the sharing. Taxes collected by the local governments usually will go to the local governments. And sometimes the state collects on behalf of the local governments and share with them. Then the federal also collects certain taxes which are shared at federal level, that is at federation account level. and there are several or differences in terms of formulae. Let's give an example with the VAT. The VAT pool is shared according to the VAT pool sharing formula, which is embedded in the VAT Act, whereas the other taxes collected, like the company income tax and the custom duty and so on, are shared according to the Federation account sharing formula, which is different from the VAT pool. So therefore, the amounts, states can look at the advantage of what is it to my advantage collecting all the VAT that comes from my state, and what is the advantage of waiting for federal government to collect and share with me? How much do I get? And so on. I think this is the really crux of the issue regarding the administration and then collection of taxation.
All right, now let's get Dr. Kennedy Iwundu's own clarification of these controversies surrounding tax administration in Nigeria, which of course was caused by the inability of the authorities concerned to harmonize taxation in Nigeria. What's your take on the current controversies?
Yeah, thank you very much. My take is that the Constitution, those who drafted the Constitution never anticipated ab initio that VAT, that's transaction taxes, can be a greater source of revenue. You know, transaction taxes are taxes you pay or collect at the point of buying or purchasing of something. An example of transaction taxes are VAT and withholding tax. If you look at that exclusive list on that item 58 and 59, it specifically mentions stamp duties. It mentioned income taxes like company income tax. It mentioned capital gain tax. It mentioned profit tax like petroleum profit tax and all that. But you discover that issues of consumption taxes or sales taxes or whatever value-added tax was not mentioned. So just like Taiwo said, when a constitution never mentioned anything, for in the exclusive list that federal government, these are taxes that are supposed to be collected by federal government, and it wasn't there, it means that the state should be the one responsible to collect it. In 1986, the military came out with the Sales Tax Act, which empowered, they gave instruction that the states should be the one that will collect the Sales Tax Act. But the Sales Tax Act was replaced in 1999 on value-added tax. The reason why it was replaced was the Sales Tax Act didn't have so much things to collect, like banking transactions were not there. Some professional services were not included. And again, another reason why they asked the Federal Land Revenue Service to collect the VAT is because of administrative efficiency in terms of collection. As at that time, it was viewed that so many states don't have the capacity to collect VAT. So they believe that Federal Land Revenue Service has the structure, the capacity, the administration to effectively collect VAT. But now, it's not about the collection. I think the major contention we are having now is the sharing. The contention right now, Nigerians are discussing, is just the collection, but the sharing arrangement, where the Federal Inland Revenue Service, after collecting the VAT, they take their 4% cost of collection from the VAT. Then whatever that is left after taking their 4% cost of collection, the federal government will take 15%, and the 85% will be shared to the states. Now, some people are asking questions, why should the man who takes 15% be the one to collect? Why the states who now take the 85% will be waiting for the federal government to collect? Why not say, states, collect your VAT, retain your 85%, and give me 15%? So this is where the discussion is coming.
So, sorry, let's clarify this. The sharing formula is not exactly 15% for the federal government and 85% for the states. It's 15% for the federal government, 50% for the states, and then 35% for local government.
For local government,
yes, please.
Exactly.
Yes.
So that is it. So the issue is that the challenge we are having, that's the discussion, the national discussion is, why should the federal government collect VAT from 36 states of the federation, including FCT, and end up sharing it back to the state. Why not say, state, collect your VAT and give me 15% of whatever you have collected? And that brings about the fiscal federalism we are talking about, empowering the states to collect taxes, empowering the states to grow. Because if a state is not collecting VAT, the state has the responsibility to begin to commercialize their state, begin to industrialize their state, because you cannot collect VAT if your state is not industrialized. Just like the Minister of Finance, the then Minister of Finance, Kemi Ajoshi, mentioned that in 2019, Lagos contributed 55% of VAT collected. Abuja contributed 20%, Kano 5%, Rivers 6%, and Kaduna 1%. Meaning that 4 states and FCT contributed 87% of the total VAT collected. Then the question comes, what is happening to other states? Is it that they can't collect VAT? Is it that they can't be commercialized? Is it that they can't be industrialized for them to collect? So this court judgment has re-echoes the need for fiscal federalism. How do we put administration of VAT where it will encourage state for development?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Taiwo Oyedele in Lagos, let's further examine what Kennedy Wundu was saying with regard to why the practice had been to concede to the Federal Inland Revenue Service to collect, because we do know that for many years until recently, a number of state internal revenue boards, as they used to be known, were not up to scratch. At some point, you had a number of them engaging consultants, who of course undertook a number of sometimes very drastic measures against taxpayers. Is this the same issue that is, of course, engaging the interest of stakeholders? That look, why should FIRS be the collecting agency for VAT, retaining 4%, and then coming to share, as we have indicated, the balance 15% federal government, 50% to the states, all the states, and 35% to all the local government areas?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. I think the starting point is to think about VAT. It's a very different tax from many other taxes. So VAT, as of today, is practiced in over 100 countries around the world. Almost 99% of those countries administer their VAT centrally, including many of the countries that are also a federation like Nigeria. But what happens about VAT is it has different dimensions. Number one is, because it's a value-added tax, not sales tax, it means that I can buy my goods in Kano and I'll pay input VAT, but my destination to go and sell them is in Lagos. So a VAT system requires that you can claim your input VAT against your output VAT, because VAT was designed to even address the deficiencies of sales tax. So if Kano State has collected my input VAT and I want to come and claim it in Lagos, what mechanism would we have in Nigeria to make that happen? And we need to be realistic. We should not just be legalistic alone. The reality is that it will not work. States, we have instances that are even easier than that. And to get money out of any state is almost impossible. Number two issue is that value-added tax is not only limited to the physical territory of Nigeria. So we have VAT to do with import. And in fact, for 2020, just last year, almost 400 billion, I think about 357 billion, was collected in terms of import VAT. So no state, even based on our constitution, has the powers to go and collect VAT at the border. So that has to be done by the federal government. Today it's being done by the customs on behalf of the federation. And then you also have what we call non-import foreign services. So, there has been conversation around Twitter and the rest of them, especially the tech companies. They're not physically in Nigeria, but they're rendering services and any income in Nigeria, and you want to add VAT to it. A state cannot do that. For 2020, import VAT and non-import foreign VAT added together was actually more than 50%. It was more than half of what we collected, the 1.53 trillion that we collected last year, was to do with international trade. No state can be able to do that. Now, what you then, if you put all of that together, it's leading you to a point where you have to say, it is not a question of whether state should be the one just collecting it. It's the fact that state alone cannot collect it. Can we then find a structure that fits our situation and circumstances and try and see how do we make that work for the interest of everyone? My personal view in terms of the capacity of states to collect taxes is that it has improved from where we were in 1993, but it's not anywhere close to where it needs to be. And I'll tell you my simple basis for making that conclusion. It is because around the world, personal income tax is the highest revenue earning tax of any other tax headings. Far more than companies' income tax, more than consumption taxes and transaction taxes around the world. South Africa, with a population of less than 1/3 of Nigeria, made about 12 trillion naira equivalent from personal income tax alone in the last fiscal year. Nigeria, of all the 36 states, including the FCT, we could not make 1 trillion. We made about 840-something billion naira. That's the amount one state should be making. So this is personal income tax that states have been administering for so many years, yet we see a lot of, deficiency. And of course, if you extend it to other taxes, you see that the capacity is really not there. So therefore, the conversation should start moving away from who has the power to impose and collect to how do we enhance the size of the cake. And I do admit that there are concerns around the sharing, because if you feel like there's some states, for example, where they say certain items are prohibited even from being consumed in their territories, and those items are generating VAT in other territories and they are participating in sharing them, so you tend to have this kind of situations where some states feel that they are being undercut by others and they feel that they're generating more than what they are collecting. Ogun State, for example, will tell you we have a lot of factories, they're doing activities in our state, but they then go and report the sales in Lagos State, and then we account it as part of derivation from Lagos State, even though the activities happen in Ogun State. So everybody has their own side of the story to tell. I think this is the time for us to have a national conversation on how do we fix this problem for the benefit of everyone.
I think that national conversation has just started with this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. Because from all your explanations, there seems to be some level of complexities, with the way this even VAT is structured. And I want to bring in Ismaila Muhammad Zakari also to speak to some of the issues raised by the last speaker, because he actually raised some very pertinent issues concerning VAT taxation in Nigeria. He also mentioned about enhancing the size of the cake. He talked about some parts of the country where certain commodities are not consumed, yet they will get a share of VAT of such commodity that is consumed in other parts of the country. So these complexities, how can we get out of it? Right, before we begin to talk about sharing formula. He has also indicated that the states do not have the capacity to actually get VAT from, say, the import VATs and what have you. How do we get out of these some kind of complexities to streamline this and know exactly how best to tackle VAT tax administration in Nigeria?
Thank you. I share the same view with Mr. Tayo Oedele regarding the fact that the states are not really there with regards to the efficient collection of taxation in terms, especially VAT. VAT is a complex tax, and like Taiwo said, there is the issue of the input VAT. And so when you collect VAT, you first pay for VAT in the process of your services or in manufacturing. So what you pay to the suppliers of your work, raw materials is called input VAT. And then when you now finish your production and you sell, what you collect is called output VAT. And then you're supposed to, based on the system, based on the law, you're supposed to deduct your output VAT from your input VAT first, from your output VAT, and then you remit the difference to the tax authority. And so one of the complex issues we have for states to collect VAT is for how to handle the input VAT element. So if I get my input from outside my state and pay the input VAT to my supplier outside the state, and then I come and do my sales or my production and I make my sales, and I'm supposed to now collect VAT on top of that sales. How am I going to account for the input? How is the state? And there are situations when actually I don't even, my goods are not vatable, but I have paid input VAT, and the law allows me to collect a refund. So in the treatment of the refund, is the state now going to refund me what I actually didn't pay to them? I paid to another state. That is a very complex issue. Secondly, the issue of consumption. I think the issue of consumption has actually been dealt with in terms of, say, states that do not consume certain things. I think what it is that there is also a derivation in VAT where the sale is made and the VAT that is collected is attributed to that state. And so I think that to a great extent, the issue brought by Taiwo regarding that states do not consume certain things and they are sharing, I think is reduced to a minimum. Yes, of course, there are certain of those sales and so on that will come to the general pool and the states will be sharing. But I don't think they look at it from the commodities that have been sold. They look at it more generally that revenue has been collected. But the most important element is that of the complexity is around the import VAT and VAT around non-import foreign services. Taiwo mentioned that those taxes are actually collected by the federal. So import VAT are collected at the ports and then accounted for by the Nigerian customs, and then it's pulled together with the VAT. Now, if the state governments, like in the River State VAT law, they have already captured the issue of imported goods in their act in section 16. So if in section 16 they are talking about imported goods, they should pay VAT before payment of, they should pay VAT before clearing the goods. I don't know what machinery they have, whether they, is it at the borders of the state that the goods will be collected, the tax will be collected? Is any good coming into the state called expected to be imported, and so on? So I think we need to look at the definition. There are many complexities in it, but I think that is why it may be better that the federal continue to administer the VAT while the states should concentrate on, state and local government should concentrate on discussing about the sharing of the pool.
Okay, Ismaila Zakari, thank you very much, Dr. Kennedy Wundu. Of course, you know, the more issues that you have raised, the more complexities we see in all of this. You talked about VAT, for instance, on imports, either of goods or of services, and who has the competence to deal with that. There's no state, for instance, that has its own customs service. There's no state that is empowered, you know, to be at any of the border points or entry points into the country. But can we try to have an understanding of what happened, say, in Rivers? Because listening to the state governor, he was arguing, for instance, that for the FRS to be entitled, as it were, to 4% as collection cost, tends to, in the view of the governor, shortchange the recipients of VAT. So he gave an example. Look, the state is awarding a number of contracts. You have the VAT component of those contracts, previously 5%, now 7.5%. And that before, of course, the contractor is paid, the VAT is deducted and remitted to FRS. So the FRS incurs no cost whatsoever in collecting that money. And yet, when the FRS now gets the pool of VAT collected, it deducts 4%. And that, but itself, as Rivers, that has contributed so much, first by awarding the contract, now gets a tiny sliver of this taking. How do we understand this in the first instance, and how does it fit into the whole argument of more efficient collection of VAT?
Thank you very much. In fact, whatever we are saying, irrespective of the complexity in the collection or who to collect, we should also look at equity. Equity in terms of sharing and collection. Now, I want to say something. My personal view is that VAT administration can be done in a way we do stamp duties. What I mean by that is that place VAT administration under concurrent list. Concurrent list in the sense that both federal and state can collect. Just like we earlier said, we can, in stamp duties today, federal government collects stamp duties, state collects stamp duties. But federal government collects stamp duties with respect to companies, transactions, while states collect stamp duties with respect to individuals. We can do VAT the same way. We can have a VAT administration where federal government can collect VAT with respect to importation, collect VAT with respect to non-importation items, services, collect VAT on so many areas where it's technical for state to collect, and allow state to collect VAT. Why would a state have hotels operating in the state and federal government be collecting VAT from the hotels operating in the state? Because the hotels that are operating in that state are contributing to environmental degradation of that state. So I believe that the equity should make it in a way that VAT administration or VAT as an act should be placed under a concurrent list. Concurrent list in the sense that certain areas will be allowed for federal to collect, while certain areas will be allowed for state to collect, just as you have in stamp duties today. In stamp duties, state collects stamp duties, federal government collects stamp duties. But federal government collects stamp duties with respect to companies, while state collects stamp duties with respect to individuals. So the same thing can happen in VAT, where the administration, we look at the areas where the states are unable to collect those VAT, like in customs, like in importation, like in all those technical ways a state cannot collect because they don't have borders. But there are some certain consumption taxes, like in gardens in Abuja, hotels in Abuja. The FCT IRS can be given responsibility to collect those taxes. So I'm looking at administration of VAT, where it will be placed as a concurrent list, where the state will collect and federal will also collect. It takes us time. It will take us time to now list the area where this is the area state can collect VAT, and this is the areas, just like the governor said. He stays in his states an award contract, and federal inland revenue takes 4% of the contract he has awarded, and the VAT he has awarded in state goes to federal government. So we have to begin to look at that very well. And I also want to say that one of the reasons why we should encourage states to collect some taxes is also to make sure we improve the economy of states. This idea of federal government collecting all taxes and giving to states is making so many states to be lazy. It's making so many states to be lazy. Let us remove technicalities now. This feeding bottle federalism, we should begin to look at it. It's not working. It's not developing the country. We want a federalism where we allow the states to collect some taxes to develop. So many governors, people are coming today to contest governorship election because they are waiting for federal allocation from federal government. We want to start seeing people who want to contest as the governor of their state by bringing ideas on how to increase internal generated revenue of their state. How to improve internal, and that's the only way you have even development across states. You have competition, have diversification. So we should start thinking of how do we empower states to collect certain taxes for the growth of those states. Today, if federal government don't give allocation to some states will not pay salaries.
The federal government doesn't give allocation. It's the federation.
It's the federation.
It's managed by the federal government.
It's the federal government. So if some of them don't give allocations to this, some states cannot pay salaries. So we want to start seeing a situation where some states will be empowered to collect taxes, to increase the internal revenue without depending on the federal government. That is what fiscal federalism is all about.
Okay.
Why must 36 states depend on the federal government to survive? So, irrespective of the difficulties in VAT collection, like what my brother was saying, you go to Kano and they suffer an input VAT. You go to Lagos and sell, and you have to pay an output VAT. How will you? We can have a law that, in as much as you have evidence of the input VAT you have suffered, irrespective of wherever you suffered it, they should give it to you as a credit, and you pay the balance in terms of input and output VAT. That is happening, like it's happening in international trade. When you show that you have suffered taxation in another shore to Nigerian, based on the double treaty agreement you have, they will say, okay, since you have suffered this tax there, we will not allow you to pay it here again. The fact that I will suffer input VAT in Kano and have an output VAT in Lagos doesn't mean that the Lagos Internal Revenue Service not recognize the VAT input I suffered in Kano and minus it for me to pay the balance. So those things can be looked into. So that's what I'm saying. In as much as we are talking about a state not being capable, not having the capacity, we should also build, governors should help their state internal revenue service to build the capacity to collect some of these taxes so that states will compete. States will begin to develop without depending on the federation. Thank you very much.
All right, I've just had a new word here, feeding bottle federalism. You know, I mean, coming from our friend Dr. Kennedy Iwundu, and his argument is that we should widen the scope or the capacity of states to also be involved in tax collection, especially with respect to VAT. Now, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, I'm sure you've listened to Dr. Iwundu. I raised some of the issues he did raise, and also part of the question put out by Kingsley, considering the argument of the governor of Rivers State, who made it so clear that he cannot award a contract where VAT is directly taken to FIRS, and FIRS is claiming that after that they have incurred some expenses, which leads to them collecting 4% of that VAT. Now, how do you contextualize this, with respect to what we're seeking to achieve this morning, as to know whether there can be a way out of proper VAT tax administration in Nigeria?
Very, very, very good question. Let me try and provide some perspectives. So it is not right to say that just because you awarded a contract and you remitted it yourself, it means that the FRS did not spend any effort or cost of collection. That is not correct. And if I just give you a simple analogy, today, under the Personal Income Tax Act, employers are the agents of government. They deduct PAYE. They go to the bank and remit themselves. Despite that, the state tax authorities still get their cost of collection. The reason why that makes sense is because FRS has a whole large unit of employees that are dealing with VAT matters. They are all over the country. In fact, in many of the states, the VAT that the FRS is collecting can't even pay the full salaries of some of those staff. And then there are a lot of issues to do with audits. So as a tax practitioner myself, I can attest to the fact that a lot of effort goes into doing audits. Some of it also has to do with the international dimension of VAT. All of these resources and effort, including human capital, training, that FRS is embarking on, you cannot associate and attribute it to one contract from one to the other. I think it's a wrong way of looking at the cost of collection. So that, in my view, is not a correct analysis. Having said that, we also need to remember that every single state also awards contracts. It's not only Rivers State. And in fact, federal government awards far more contracts than any state that you can imagine. such that the FCT, collected, over 200. FCT collected 202 billion VAT last year, but the FCT and the local government only shared 35 billion. So there was a surplus of 167 billion that FCT alone put into the pool. By contrast, Rivers State collected 41 billion and shared 39 billion, the Rivers State and the local government in Rivers State. Technically, the difference of 2 billion that you have left is really the cost of collection. Now, is 4% too high? The answer is no. Given our circumstances globally, the cost of collecting taxes benchmark at about 1%. But you can only achieve that 1% when you're collecting a lot of revenue, so that your 1% is big. And many of the states today, even based on their own revenue law, have a cost of collection for their own state internal revenue service ranging anywhere between 5 to 10%. If you add the cost that they pay consultants that they use as agents, sometimes as high as 10 and 15%, I can tell you authoritatively that if states start collecting VAT today, the cost of their collection will be far higher than 4%. So I think that information, in my view, is very, very important. To the question that my friend at your studio there, the doctor said about the input and output VAT. I do agree with him partially that, you don't have to ask Kano State to agree with Lagos State before I can get my input VAT. Just put it in the law that any input VAT that I pay should be recognized for me as a credit and only just pay the difference. To that extent, I agree with him. The difficulty that he needs to think about, and other people who are advocating this, is what happens when I pay my input VAT in Kano, I paid 1,000 naira. But I now sell in Lagos and I make a loss. Of course, loss making is part of doing business. Nobody plans to make loss, but losses happen every now and then. So I now sell in Lagos and the output VAT is 800. Technically under the VAT law, I now need a refund or a credit against the other VAT that I've collected and is due to Lagos State. How would we resolve that? And even when you solve that out, if you say, just offset it against other VAT that is due to Lagos State and hope that Lagos State will be happy with that, how do you address international trade, both physical through the border and international trade that does not come through the border? It may be that the answer that Nigeria needs to find with regards to VAT is allow it to be collected centrally. This whole thing about collection is, in my view, is very outdated. In those days, government spend a lot of energy, they raise assessment, they go around from one shop to the other to collect taxes. That was collection at the time. Now, collection is done almost seamlessly. A lot of self-assessment using technology. So the focus should start shifting to who benefits from the amount we've collected. Imagine a model that allows whatever we collect from every state, less cost of collection goes to that state, such that the amount we are sharing as VAT is only limited to the amount on international transaction through the border and foreign non-import services. So I think that will probably just address the issue almost 100% without creating the problem and complexity. Some of the works we have done, some of this we did through the Nigerian Economy Summit Group around tax morale. It shows that one of the reasons why the tax compliance rate in Nigeria is very low, and by consequence our revenue collection from tax, is due to the complexity of the tax system. So what is going to happen if we don't address this problem is that a small company doing business in 3 or 4 states have to deal with 4 state authorities. Imagine you are a bank. I know people don't have any sympathy for banks and telecommunication. You have to file VAT returns in all 36 states plus FCT and then with FRS every single month. And then we need to also think about when I want to do my tax audit. The company will give you their annual financial statement with their turnover. They will not do turnover and get auditors to audit turnover in every single state. Nobody does that. You do one annual financial statement that is audited by your auditor. How do you reconcile it to be able to do your audit properly? So at the end of the day, we must find, I repeat again, a solution that works for our situation, addresses the concerns as much as possible, but overall, does not make our ease of doing business and ease of paying taxes problem more complicated than already is the situation as we speak.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, and indeed the other gentlemen. We're going to take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation.
COVID-19, that is the black swan of the century, has actually hit the whole world very hard, even the strongest of economies, and Nigeria was not spared. But due to the proactive stance and steps that the president has taken, we've been able to come out quickly. The president has consistently said we must invest in infrastructure, even as we're investing in human capital, that we must invest in infrastructure, because at the end of the day, that is what will bring about a sustainable economic growth. So the president has given us our directive. He has said you must make sure you pay salaries and pay pensions, but you also make sure that the critical projects of roads, railway, airports, bridges, major infrastructure that are meant to drive the growth of the economy, that we consistently invest in them, even if we have to continue to borrow to do so.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
See, nurse, she's saying she feels unwell, despite my efforts to practice good hygiene.
Mom says wash your hands to keep the germs.
Washing hands is good, but surfaces can also have germs, and you shouldn't use just anything for cleaning them. Use Jig. Jig's formula has been scientifically proven to stay active for longer, giving you whitening and germ kill protection on a variety of surfaces. Disinfect to protect, just Jig it. Endorsed by National Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives.
A new edition of TV Guide is out, exclusively with Governor Simon Lalong of Plateau State.
Since assuming office, our rescue administration has pursued the path of peace and reconciliation and restored confidence among people of different ethnic, religious, and political persuasions. Peace is back on the plateau. We are building world-class infrastructure in roads and opening up opportunities for innovation.
The edition is a compendium of mind-blowing stories for your reading pleasure, ranging from entertainment, economy, sports, media, politics, family, and lots more. Pick up a copy and keep abreast with issues and trending features within our space. TV Guide, very incisive, very educative and compelling. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or any NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
It's the dawn of a new era on NTA's flagship program, The Sports Parliament. Revitalized with lots of varieties, including feedback responses from viewers. Sports Parliament, the weekly sports show that exposes all the intrigues in the Nigerian sports sector and projects an agenda on the way forward for Nigerian sports. On NTA every Thursday at 10:30 p.m., running for 1 whole hour, discussing sports. The parliamentarians are more committed than ever to enlighten the viewers as the Sports Parliament takes it to a whole new level on the floor of the House. Keep a date with the Sports Parliament as motions are moved every Thursday on the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, with his gavel to harmonize sports resolutions. The House have it.
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Let's return to Kano, where Ismaila Zakari is still with us via Zoom. Malam Ismaila, Taiwo Oyedele raised a number of pertinent issues, which in his view would, of course, compound the challenges if we were to further decentralize the collection of certain forms of taxes, in particular, for instance, the VAT. I was just wondering, has the Joint Tax Board been any effective in trying to streamline some of these teething or lingering issues with regard to more efficient tax administration in the country?
Well, to my knowledge, the Joint Tax Board meets regularly, and the Joint Tax Board is a board that consists of the chairman, the executive chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service as the chair of the Joint Tax Board, with all the executive chairmen of the Internal Revenue Services of the states as members. And in that board, they are supposed to be a coordinating body that looks at taxation generally, especially with regards to the administration of taxes. Generally speaking, I'm not aware that there are any issues with regards to joint tax board that they are not able to resolve. At least there are no issues out there now in the public domain where whether there are disputes between the membership or within the joint tax board. So I don't think that there are issues there, but I believe that issues such as we're talking about today regarding the VAT and especially the VAT law passed by River State government and signed on the 19th of August is something that the Joint Tax Board should be meeting about. It's something that not even the Joint Tax Board, but the National Economic Council should be meeting about, because the issue of this matter is not really about the states. For me, it is about the taxpayer. What should the taxpayer do now in River State? If I'm a taxpayer in River State, what is my fate? Am I going to pay 2 VATs? Because as it is today, the VAT law still subsists in Nigeria. That's the VAT Act of 1993. As well as in River State, there is now a new VAT law, regardless of how it was enacted and passed, regardless of its content. It is a law that has now been passed and signed by the governor, and it has become a law. So what is the fate of the taxpayer today in River State? And if other states come on board and set up or enact their own tax VAT laws tomorrow, what will be the fate of the taxpayer? I think this should be the debate today, what we're talking about. If I am to advise a taxpayer in River State today, I would tell him immediately to seek legal opinion. And I would be looking at a situation where right now, the organized private sector that will be most affected by this should also be meeting and seeking legal opinion, and perhaps even go to court for a class action suit to say that what is the fate of the taxpayer in River State today, because their members are affected. So really, today we should be talking about the taxpayer. The taxpayer is really in crisis in River State. I wouldn't like to be one of those who is to face the consequences of the two laws, because the laws are asking for taxes to be paid from the same base. And the two laws are still extant, to the extent that the judicial process is still ongoing, because I understand that Federal Inland Revenue Service and the Attorney General have appealed the case. And so once the case is in appeal, my expectation is that status quo should be maintained. And the lawyers will be telling us what that status quo should be. Should it be that taxpayers should continue to pay VAT to to the Federal Inland Revenue, or they should not pay VAT at all, and so on? I think this is the crisis that we're in. And this is the way that Nigerians should look at this matter, that it's not a simple matter, it's really a critical issue for the nation.
All right, our guest here, Dr. Kennedy Wundu, in his last comment, he talked about putting a VAT administration in a concurrent list, so that the states can also play a role in the collection of VAT. All right, now, quickly raise the issue of joint tax board, which is in existence, which is of course a board where states are also involved. What has been the role of this board, and how has that role been effective in terms of making the VAT administration viable in such a way that there will be no complaints on the part of states in terms of what they're collecting, and again the amount that goes to FIRS because of their role in collecting VAT?
Okay, I want to say something. The Joint Tax Board is more of administrative. taxation is about law. Taxation is about law. In every tax, there must be a law backing it. So the duty of the Joint Tax Board is to administration. They have no role to play in lawmaking. And they will wait for, I expected, like what my brother from Kano said, I expected the Rivers State government to wait since the Federal Revenue Service has appealed. I expected the Rivers State government to wait for us to get the outcome of the Court of Appeal. And I'm sure if it, from Court of Appeal, it may even get to the Supreme Court. But what is important is this. Just as I earlier said, the solution to what we have today is to bring VAT into a concurrent list. If you bring VAT into a concurrent list without making it an exclusive list, it will solve our problem. One, it will give powers to the state to collect some part of VAT. For example, just like the governor said, if he's awarding contract from his state, the VAT he's paying, he collects it. If federal government is awarding contract from Abuja, it goes to federal government. If Kano State is awarding contract, it goes to Kano State government. So just like we have in stamp duties, federal government is collecting, state is collecting. And let us equally look at the global practice. Today in United States, who collect VAT? It's the states. So because sometimes we want to be like America, but we don't want to do what America is doing. That is the problem we have in this country. You are emulating other countries that are progressing, but you don't want to do what they are doing. Today in the United States, the administration of sales taxes, consumption taxes are with the states, not with the federal government.
And the percentages vary from state to state. Yeah,
yes, they are progressing, and you still want to do something centrally collected because we want to run a fiscal federalism where federal government want to collect all taxes and start sharing to the state. It will not help this country grow. Whatever is the complexity, we can help the state build capacity. We can help the state. The professionals that are working in Federal Revenue Service can also work with the state internal revenue service.
So you are saying that if states are allowed to collect VAT accruable to them based on the current practice, then there will be no need for sharing.
There's no need. Because the point is that, let's assume that it's not even an assumption. Every 36 state government gives contract, is it not? Rivers State gives contract, Kano State gives contract, Kaduna, Lagos, every state government gives contract. We can have a concurrent list where a contract given by any state government, let that state government collect their VAT. A contract given by the federal government, let federal government collect the VAT. Then you can also say, federal government, go ahead and collect VAT coming from our borders, from customs, from importation, from non-import items. You have solved this problem. There was a mistake the National Assembly made last time. They went and said that state will collect consumption tax and federal will collect VAT. To the extent that I have some clients who will pay consumption tax 5% to state and also pay the same 5% to the federal government. I said, what can be? Although the court has nullified that. Because just like you asked, the Joint Tax Board, they were deriving their administrative activities from what we have then as taxes and levies approved list of collection. Mm-hmm. That taxes and levies approved list of collection was a list where there's a number of taxes collected by the federal, number of taxes collected by the state, number of taxes collected by the local government. Now, that taxes and levies approved list of collection has been nullified by the Court of Appeal as amended. So when you want to mention that, they say, no, you can't mention it again because Court of Appeal nullified it. People couldn't go to Supreme Court, and that was the end of it. So you have to go back to the Constitution to look at who is to collect what to collect. So our Constitution can still be touched by the National Assembly where VAT that was not there, but because the major challenge we have today is that there was no mention of VAT in our Constitution. Mm-hmm. So now you can decide to say, okay, let's put it on the exclusive list, let's put it on the concurrent list, let's put it on the residual list. But for me, for us to have peace, for us to encourage states to collect taxes, for us to have achieve our fiscal federalism, place VAT as in a concurrent list.
Okay, Dr. Iwundu, thank you very much. I mean, that's been a recurring point that you have made in the course of this conversation. But we do know that the process of amending the Constitution isn't a piece of cake altogether. But there are practical challenges that we have to deal with right now. And one of those practical challenges Ismaila Zakari already raised. That is, my question is going to Taiwo Yedile in Lagos. The practical dilemma that a VAT payer faces today in Rivers. Now, while he was signing the bill into law, the Rivers State governor said, after the Federal High Court held that FIRS could not and should not collect VAT in Rivers, then there was obviously a vacuum, and that the state would not permit that vacuum to exist, which was why the House of Assembly passed the bill and then the governor signed it into law. But the FIRS itself has issued a statement, that was over the weekend, advising VAT payers in Rivers to continue to pay through or to the FIRS. What are the practical issues around this? I want us to, as much as possible, avoid the litigation around it, because that matter is sub judice. Zachary was saying a point that, okay, now having gone on appeal, then the status quo should be maintained. That's not the way it works out in law. Mere notice of appeal doesn't act as a stay of execution. There is, in fact, an application already filed by the FIRS in the Federal High Court. So we won't get into all of that, asking for an injunction of the injunction against the execution of the order of the Federal High Court, restraining the FIRS from collecting VAT in Rivers. So, but the practical dilemma that a VAT payer in Rivers faces today, there is a VAT law by the Rivers State government, and the FIRS is saying, look, continue to pay to us. How would you advise your client, Mr. Yedele?
Yes, so I'd like first to address the issue around we don't want there to be a vacuum. And it's probably the first time I've heard that on tax-related matters. So I think the issue of vacuum is usually to do with leadership. So for example, you don't want to have a country which for a day does not have a president, or a state that has no governor. So you have to do something immediately. When it comes to tax matters, actually, what will happen if you don't pay tax for a few days? So I think that if you look at the content of the law passed by the Rivers State government, even that law itself provides for registration for VAT, requires that you register for VAT before you start charging VAT, and it gives a period of 6 months, depending on whether you've started business before or you're commencing business afresh. It also talks about the time for filing your returns and paying your VAT, and it says it's 21 days after the previous month. So what that means is if that law was signed on the 19th of August, you can only begin to implement it, from the same day or the following day, based on the Interpretation Act in Nigeria. Your returns, in terms of any VAT you've collected in August, would only be due by the 21st of September, next month. But unfortunately, we're already seeing assessment and demand notices asking, taxpayers to pay, which is not even consistent with the content of that law enacted by Rivers State. So my point would be, without getting into what is in within the purview of the court process, so it's not sub judice, is to say, do you want to win a war and lose the battle, even if you're right, legally speaking? What do you lose by having this engagement with the federal government, maybe the Governors Forum or NEC, engagement with taxpayers, engagement with practitioners, setting up a proper, structure, enhancement, awareness, education, design the forms, how we fulfill the form. Those things haven't happened, to the best of my knowledge. So we've created a very difficult situation for taxpayers. So again, I wish I can give an advice, that is 100% perfect. It's almost impossible to do that in this case. What I would advise is, for all the taxpayers that are affected, to use the platform of their associations and groups to go to court and ask the courts to tell them what they need to do, because the courts will be in a position to then advise them rightly, so they don't end up paying 7.5% in two places, which is 15%. The cost of doing business is already high. Many businesses are struggling. I also observed that from the River State VAT law, there's no exemption for small businesses like we have under the national law, which means this also has an implication for small businesses as well as poor households. So at the end of the day, it has to be that we find a solution that works. I still think that that solution would be allow the collection to be done centrally, but use data to attribute whatever is being collected in one state entirely to that state, such that what we are sharing are the ones that are internationally collected. In the United States, it is true that sales tax, by the way, is not VAT. Sales tax is implemented at the state level. But even in the United States, anything to do with taxes on imports or anything across the border, goes to the U.S. Treasury. So no state will be able to keep that. We also have the structure in India. India is a fiscal federalism we have in Brazil. So there's nothing we are trying to go through now that some guys have not dealt with, even many years before now, is to learn from those other countries and then bring it back home and say, how do we replicate it to fit our circumstances? I'm an advocate of fiscal federalism and putting more resources at the state. I just feel like the states are not even scratching what they have currently. I told you earlier on that personal income tax is the biggest revenue earner of any tax head anywhere in the world. It's with the state 100%. VAT that we are discussing is 85% with the state and local governments. Stamp duties is 100% with the state. The Constitution says whatever you collect between individuals as a state, you keep it and spend it. Whatever is collected by the federal government is shared to the state 100% after taking cost of collection. Even today as we speak, companies' income tax that is even collected by the FRS is shared with all three levels of government. Import duty, there's nothing that federal government collects that they don't share. So it's not a conversation between state and federal government. It's a fiscal federalism conversation, which I think we should resolve, putting the interests of Nigeria first, not the separate interests of various states. Maybe using the Finance Act amendment, that is the process that is ongoing as we speak, it may be necessary to amend how the VAT revenue is shared using data over the past maybe 10 years. Only 20% of VAT revenue today is shared based on derivation. In my view, that 20% is too little. Let's raise the bar as to what portion is shared based on derivation so that nobody feels like they are doing so much and then other states are collecting from their efforts. And then ultimately, we go back to the Constitution. The process of reviewing the Constitution is going on now. Let's use that opportunity to address this issue of VAT and other issues relating to tax matters in the tax law. Multiplicity of taxes, multiplicity of tax collecting agencies. I can continue on and on. We need to fix those problems in the best interest of our country. So we start borrowing to fund our government. Our borrowing rate is high. Our debt to GDP ratio is growing. Our debt service cost to revenue is alarming, and that's not sustainable. And this is not only federal, it cuts across, even at the state level. And this is an opportunity, in my view, to address those fundamental issues.
Yeah. Mr. Taiwo Udele, excuse me, thank you very much there for your contribution, Kirian. Yeah. Mr. Udele has raised the issue of PITA, that's the Personal Income Tax Act, and how it's within the purview of state governments. But I do know, we're not getting into that now. I hope you do know, certainly you are aware, of the lingering controversy surrounding the efficiency even in the collection of personal income tax. It's supposed to be a function of residency. You earlier mentioned Ogun and Lagos. There are persons who reside in Ogun State and are working in Lagos. So their personal income tax ordinarily should go to Ogun State. There are persons who are residing in Niger State and working in the FCT or residing in Mararaba or One Man Village or Masaka in Nasarawa State and are working in the FCT.
I think the issue of this tax thing, is so complex that we have to revisit it, especially in the Constitution of this country.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so gentlemen, we'd like to appreciate you for being part of our conversation this morning. Dr. Kennedy Iwundu, who is Vice Chair of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, Abuja District. Thanks a lot for being our guest this morning.
Thank you for having me, sir.
Via Zoom, Ismaila Muhammadu Zakari, who is the managing partner of a firm of chartered accountants, tax and financial advisors. We appreciate your being on Good Morning Nigeria. And from our Lagos Network Center, we're joined by Mr. Taiwo Yedele, Fiscal Policy Partner and Africa Tax Leader at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Thanks a lot for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's go over to our sports desk.
Nigerian duo Kevin Apogoma and Taiwo Awuni were on target as Hoffenheim were held to a 2-2 draw by Union Berlin in their Bundesliga clash at the Pre-Zero Arena on Sunday. The lead lasted only 4 minutes with Apogoma nodding home Angelo Steele's cross.
And the queuing up here, and that's 1-1, and it's all about the defenders. Kevin Apogoma.
The hosts took the lead for the first time in the game on the armour courtesy of Jacob Larsson's fine strike. Awuni restored parity for Union Berlin in the 47th minute after he was set up by Max Cruz. Meanwhile, Rangers ensure they go into next weekend's Old Firm clash level on points with Celtic after a forceful but flawful performance to win 4-2 away to Ross County on Sunday. 3 times Steven Gerrard's men established a 2-goal lead in the Highlands, starting with a sleek goal from Nigerian midfielder Joe Aribo.
Efficient from Joe Aribo. Good against Ross County. The views of Ian Ferguson. Fantastic.
Conor Gertson, Alfredo Morelos and Scott Alford were also on the score sheet.
Well, and that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. We thank you for watching. We do hope you'll return again tomorrow when we bring you a fresh edition of the program. My name is Kirian Umaya. Have a great Monday.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. You have a nice day.
This vaccine is safe and it has been certified safe and usable by NAFTA.
Hello and welcome. It's time for another interesting package of
Everything Music.
Angelina, you dey cool in my temperature. If you call, I go come deliver.
This is Stocky Movies.
In times of old, the world was full of wonder. No!
Stop it! Welcoming you to your weekend for today.
Arise, O compatriots. It's time to use our voice.
Beyond 6 packs.
Bills.
Pay the bills. Keep paying the telephone bills. Keep paying all of my bills.
Welcome to Gallery.
Me
my paddies.
London for what?
London for medicine.
Medicine for what?
Medicine for coffee.
Are you sickness?
To our illness. Welcome to Gist Zone.
All right, my name is the Eselucien Wego One. Ona nyokoko nyonyo.
Welcome to Abuja, the place that unites Nigeria.
NTA, you can't beat the rich.
This is the network service of the NTA.
Welcome to Thoughts for the Week. I hope you've been doing very well, and I hope that the things happening in the world are not getting you down. Don't worry, they'll definitely pass. Now, let's take a look at our hands. All the fingers on our hands, they are not equal, are they? They can never be equal because our elders have said all fingers of the same hand can never be equal. That's the truth. Now imagine on your hand, all the fingers were equal. In this present day world, some people would call you a freak because they'll say that is not normal. So the fact that all the fingers are not equal doesn't mean that the small one lacks more importance than the big one. Don't be surprised that the differences you see on your fingers are the things that make them work seamlessly. It's same for nature. Let's take some examples. You have the sea. On one part of the sea, you may have this beautiful level beach where you can easily walk and have fun. On the other side, you may have some very sharp rocks that if you fall on them or from them, you may not survive. Same for the hills and the valleys. Same for the ranges and the sprawling fields in front of them. Nothing is actually the same in nature. So, even human beings are not all the same. We are all different, just like my Joseph coat. It has many colors. That is how all human beings are. We are different people, different colors, but we come together to form one complete whole. There is an Irish proverb that says, "Strength is not possible without unity." That means if all these colors did not come together in one seamless pattern, this would not be what you are seeing. Same thing with human beings. The fact that you are one particular tribe, or you are one particular gender, or you have this money or that money and the other person is poor, doesn't mean that that person doesn't have a place in this world, our elders have said. Each man has his own job in the ship. Yes, if you go on a ship, for instance, you'll find that everybody there has a role they have to play. And if one person is missing, it becomes a problem. Now imagine a company where you have an engineer and he feels he's better than the man who greases the machines. What do you think would happen if the man doesn't grease the machines? There will be a huge friction. That man in your office, again, who may just be a messenger,